Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Going to start with Donald Trump, Bill O'Reilly. What could possibly go wrong here? Is this the sexual harassment Lollapalooza? Perhaps. Evidently, Trump and O'Reilly have decided they're going to team up. Yes. Two old white guys on a speaking tour. And they announced it on the same day that Rudy Giuliani is, we get audio that Giuliani's been strong-arming the Ukrainians back before the Zelensky call. We're now finding out all of the under stuff that went on there under the underhanding dealings. Also, Stormy Daniels is back with her attorney claiming that they're in contact with the prosecutors investigating the Trump organization. Good news there. Also breaking news as we speak. Documents have been uncovered by the Senate Judiciary Committee that, Mark Meadows, all of the things that you were doing to try and pressure the DOJ and Billy Barr and those folks to do the illegal stuff of overturning the election, that's going to come and probably bite you in the behind. That's coming. So look, while I'm one who says this stuff's going too slowly, it's happening. There are people investigating things about the previous administration, all of the underhanded dealings, all of the backroom stuff, all of the mob-style arm twisting. We're finding out about. And look, everything around the election and all of the attempts to overturn it, that is being investigated. Now, here's my problem. My problem is Republicans are all on board with the steal of the next election and moving towards, making sure that in the future they can do what Trump wanted them to do. And this is the scary part in this, because I do believe, and we're going to get to Joe Manchin in a minute, but I do believe that everybody, or at least I used to believe everybody wanted the same kind of things. A fair election cycle, open to everybody. Right down that line. I used to believe that until you start looking around at what the Republicans have been doing. Again, words are cheap. It's what actions. What actions are they pursuing? And they're pursuing to ensure that in the future, if they so choose, they can go back and do what Trump wanted them to do, which to throw out the results. They're all fraudulent because I didn't win. Now, in 2016, when he did win, same kind of scenario. He was claiming all along they're going to steal it from me. There's cheating. And what? I won? Oh, that was the fairest, cleanest election ever. You can't have that both ways. Now, this brings me to Joe Manchin. Over the weekend, Joe Manchin came out with an op-ed titled, "Why I'm Voting Against the For the People Act." Now, I don't believe he was ever going to actually vote for it. He did sponsor it at one point. But now he's chosen this idea that we can't do any voting reform. We can't do anything on the voting front unless it's bipartisan. Now, look, there had been a part of me for a while that said, you know what, we should be doing these things in a bipartisan fashion. We should all agree that we want open, fair elections, that every eligible person has access to the ballot box, that we want to make it easier. People want to do mail-in ballots, great. There's a way to verify that. Oregon has been doing it for years. In fact, they don't even do the in-place voting, from what I understand. Everything's by mail, and they don't seem to have any problems. We could, if we wanted to, if we really wanted to, we could move forward in a way that would ensure everyone's right to vote. Now, you go back and you go, well, whose interest is it to stop people from voting? And it's always been, and I hate putting it this way, but it's always been the Republicans who have tried to figure out, how do we keep people from voting? It goes back to Paul Weyrich, who back, years ago said, I don't want everyone to vote. In fact, our leverage goes down as the voting populace goes up. Basically saying the more people vote, the less leverage we have. Basically reiterating what my high school government teacher said. You kids don't bother, don't register, stay home. Gives my vote more power, more strength. And they've been doing what they can do, for decades now to ensure that certain groups of people don't vote. You go back to 2000, they threw a bunch of people with names of minorities off the voting rolls. In fact, my favorite, and Greg Pallas, the investigative reporter, he uncovered this stuff when Choice Point went through a bunch of people off the voting rolls. One guy they threw off the voting rolls because he was a felon, or not yet a felon. He would be a felon in a couple of years. They actually wrote that his felony date was a couple of years into the future, which is why they threw him off the voting rolls. Now, what we now know, those people weren't felons. In fact, their names just sounded like somebody. Like, how many Rick Smiths are there in this country? So if there's one out there, all of us are thrown off the voting rolls. But here's the thing. Rick Smith is kind of one of those names where you're not really sure, so we're not going to go after that one. But a lot of the ethnic sounding names, a lot of the predominantly African American names, well, those are easy to go after. And it's what they did. They threw 90,000 people off the voting rolls, overwhelmingly African Americans, in a state that, if you believe the results and the hanging chads and all that stuff, was decided by 500 votes. You threw 90,000 people who were probably going to vote for Democrats if they voted off the voting rolls, and it was decided by 500 votes. So Republicans understand this, and Joe Manchin understands this. He goes into this screed about, partisan policy making won't instill confidence in our democracy. Here's the thing. We don't have confidence now. I don't have confidence in what the Republicans are doing in states across this country. They are setting up how they are going to steal the next election. We know this. In fact, we see it in, what is it? There are 22 bills in 14 states that have already passed that threaten the core values of a free and fair election. And yet you're saying, well, we can't do anything on the federal level because it's not bipartisanship. Do you think those states, come with me here, because this is important, Joe. Do you think those 14 states did it in a bipartisan fashion? Of course they did not. And this is where, look, I applaud the idea. You're so 1960s here. This isn't our grandparents' political scenery. It's not. He goes into talking about, there were those Republicans who stepped forward and voted for impeachment that everyone applauded. Yeah, those were people who were like, we can't have criminals overrunning our capital. Those were the 7 that had a spine and that said the steal of the election right in front of us is wrong. Any of them come forth with an idea of how to make voting more accessible, more secure, anything? The answer is no. And look, I give Burr from North Carolina and Cassidy from Louisiana and Collins from Maine and Murkowski from Alaska and Romney from Utah and Sass from Nebraska and, of course, my Senator Pat Toomey, whom I don't particularly care for. I give them credit for in that moment saying what Donald Trump did was an impeachable offense. The problem was, there it is. The problem was, the other Republicans weren't on board. And they're never going to be on board. My problem with this whole scenario, and Joe Manchin goes through this whole spiel about, how if we do this in a partisan way, it's just going to deepen the partisan divides. In states across this country, they are working on stealing the next election. Inaction at the federal level will allow that to happen. That's the end result. That is the end of the game. All of the flowery words and all that you care about the filibuster and you care that somehow you think that it's going to breed bipartisanship. It doesn't. We know this. We are basically living, the last couple of decades over and over again, where Republicans do this neat trick, and they do it masterfully. They're really good at this, where they say, we want to negotiate. We want to be bipartisan. And they amend the heck out of things. They send out amendments and they got ideas. There are no ideas here on the voting front, mind you. They haven't come forth with a, hey, well, this isn't what I dislike in the For the People Act. Let's swap it out for this. This is something we might be able to agree on. There's none of that going on, or at least none that we know of. Maybe Joe Manchin is privy to information, and I'm assuring he is, that none of the rest of the Democratic Party is privy to. Maybe in the cloakroom, maybe in the bars or wherever he hangs out with the Republicans, maybe they're whispering in his ear that there's some magical kind of bipartisanship that is possible. I'm telling you, in this moment, it's not, because Republicans understand they've got the power in the states to rig the next election. They're going to hold on to the gerrymandered districts that they've got because it's gotten them the majority. They are not going to give that up. And one of the things the For the People Act does is it attempts to break down the gerrymandering. I think we do need to have nonpartisan commissions, set up these districts in a way that if we're going to gerrymander them, they're gerrymandered for competition, not for a 90% swing one way or the other. I don't want heavily Democratic districts. I don't want heavily Republican districts. I want competitive districts. And if we're going to draw these bizarre cartoon characters and draw these weird shapes, and I mean, it's incredible to me how they've come up with these districts. If we're going to do that, we're going to contort districts, to cover half a state, and in some, like the one in Ohio, that isn't even connected by land, then we should do that in a way that's committed to making high competition districts. 50-50 districts, so that people fight on ideas, not on who can gerrymander the best district. But we are not hearing any of that stuff. None of it. The reality is Manchin knows there's nothing. Here's the thing, though. The For the People Act has a lot of very bipartisan parts to it. Voters understand this. The political partisans, they understand the game. They understand why they need to stop any federal legislation that opens up voting to people, because Republicans get it. Their numbers are dwindling. Their people are aging. They have no policy initiatives. There's nothing that they've argued for or pushed for that's going to make people's lives better. So they've got to hold on with a death grip, with the white knuckle ride death grip onto the power that they have. And that is ensuring that a large number of people don't get to vote. Again, when the voting populace goes up, their leverage goes down. And we understand that. My problem with Manchin is he keeps this mindset that we can have this kumbaya. And I hope he understands that inaction isn't really an option. Something has to be done. Now, he's talked about the John Lewis Act. The John Lewis Act is a great thing. We need to move on that. But you also need to move on major components of the For the People Act. And this is what debate is about. This is my problem with all of this stuff. Manchin says we don't have bipartisanship. Well, why not? Get on the floor of the Senate, because this is what debate is supposed to be. We debate what we like, what we don't like. We hear what we're for, what people are against. And then, here's the important part, then you vote on it. The problem we've had for so long is the Senate is the place where good ideas go to die. The Senate is the place where progress dies. And the status quo can remain. I think Reverend Warnock had probably the best line out of any of the discussions in all of the talk about the For the People Act and for the filibuster being done away with. He said that it's a contradiction to say we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in society. I find that really a telling line, because understand what our Supreme Court did when they decided the Shelby case. When they decided that, they opened up the wild, wild west into the South of doing all of the shenanigans that they've been getting away with. This idea, well, it's been a long time since 1965 and the Voting Rights Act. We're better than that now. No, we're not. We're not better than that at all. And the reality is you've got Manchin, who has created this false narrative of, well, we can choose the John Lewis Act, but not the For the People Act. They do different things. They do very different things, and they're critical. It's a false choice. The John Lewis Act would stop future, racist, anti-voter laws from proliferating. But the For the People Act would stop the rigging that's going on in our state houses across this country, and would begin to take, dark money out of politics. I had someone tell me, dark money's not the real problem. It's those small donors. No, those small donors, that's real speech. Those are real people in numbers. We the people, not a billionaire or a foundation or whatever dark money group is throwing huge tons. That's not that. We should be making transparent every dime that is spent politically. This way we know, and I've often said, we need to get patches on our senators' suits to find out which special interest they're bought and paid for. This is one of those moments where we, without question, need true reform. Now, I'm somebody who's not fond of federal legislation being the overarching legislation when states can do things right. Problem is the states haven't been doing it. Do I want to create another federal bureaucracy? No. But there has got to be a cop on the beat from all of the shenanigans we've seen out of Republicans across this country. This idea that they're going to look at what they're doing in Arizona. And you have legislators from Pennsylvania going to Arizona to go, hey, teach me how I can bring this disgraceful nonsense back to Pennsylvania, and we can do the same thing. And one of those guys, Doug Mastriano, is talking about running for governor? Does that not concern people that the guy who's helping figure out how we can steal the next election is running for a higher office? That at some point, they may go, well, you know what? We don't like the outcome. To me, that is scary, and it's wrong. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. The second we lose the sanctity of the ballot box is the second we lose this wonderful experiment of self-governance. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Rich Ojeda is going to be here to share some thoughts on Joe Manchin and where we need to go. Right back after this.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day Boston Carmen of Local 589 voted to strike. Workers had been fighting to organize for years. They now demanded union recognition. In the months before the strike, union representatives had attempted to meet with management with no success. The president of the L, in the days before it was called the T, went so far as to summarily fire 282 employees, claiming the need to maintain discipline. Incensed at the union-busting maneuver, workers walked off the job in the early hours of the morning. They began cutting trolley ropes, smashing train windows, and removing handles on controller boxes. In an effort to bust the strike, management formed a company union. They also brought in over 700 professional strikebreakers and provided housing for the scabs. Over the course of several weeks, dozens of strikers were arrested on charges that ranged from calling strikebreakers scabs to trumped-up felony charges. AFL President Samuel Gompers visited the picket line in a show of solidarity. Area labor unions provided financial and legal support. The union filed charges with the State Board of Arbitration. They argued management had caused the strike by firing hundreds of workers for union activity and coercing workers against joining the union. Once the board confirmed the union's charges, the governor and mayor both pushed for resolution. As well, Boston's Central Labor Union threatened a general strike. Union recognition finally came on July 28th, and the first contract was signed a year later. Since that time, Local 589 has weathered more than a century of anti-union storms as it continues to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we've been talking about, I really want bipartisanship if it's possible. It's not possible. Looking at what Republicans have offered and what they've done over the last several years, this fantasy island land of we're gonna come to something in a kumbaya bipartisan way, it's not gonna happen. You have to at this moment lead. If you do nothing, if nothing is allowed to happen, Republicans they've already rigged the states. It's already, the steal in 22 is going to happen. And here to share some thoughts on, Joe Manchin, the wonderful op-ed of why he's not voting for the PRO Act, and if there's any bringing him around. I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind, also a former West Virginia state senator and presidential candidate. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
I'm devastated. I really am. Joe Manchin is now talking about, he don't want to move forward unless there's bipartisanship. show me one time when the Republicans have wanted bipartisanship for anything, when there was not one single Democratic vote for the, $1 trillion giveaway to the filthy rich. The Republicans didn't say, hold on, we got to wait here until the Democrats come around. They pushed it. They force-fed it to us. And right now, Joe Manchin has turned out to be the best Republican in the Democratic Party is what it is. And it's sickening. He's doing it for personal gain is what he's doing. And then I'm just so disappointed in Joe Manchin.
Yeah. The sad reality is there are no Republican votes at the end of this rainbow. We're going to negotiate ourselves out of getting anything done.
Well, watch what they've done. They have for everything that they're talking about, the infrastructure, for everything that they're talking about, the Republicans have said, okay, we want this. And the Democrats said, okay, we'll give you that. Then the Republicans said, we want this, and we want that, and we want that, and we want that. And the Democrats did everything in their power to give them everything that they wanted. And in the end, they still vote no. It's just all they're doing is biding their time. That's all they're doing. And everybody can see this. And Joe Manchin can see this. Joe Manchin is running for governor in West Virginia in 2024, and he's trying to tap into the Republican crowd because he wants to be able to say, look, I worked with Donald Trump so that these people can daggone elect him for governor. So basically, he's willing to sell out our democracy for his next race. So I get it. Let's just do everything that he wants to do. That's it.
But you would think, and this is where, I come back to the infrastructure part. You would think West Virginia, I've been, through the state a number of times, is in desperate need of investment. This would be an opportunity to use your leverage for good, to use your leverage to go, you know what, I'll get you the vote on that infrastructure bill. I'll get you the vote on what you need, but you gotta heavily invest in my state. I mean, this is the argument if I'm running against him in 2024. Okay, you sold your party out, but you still didn't bring anything home. There's no bacon.
Exactly. I mean, we're not only is West Virginia bad when it comes to roads and stuff like that, we are 50th out of 50. We are the bottom of the barrel. We have no broadband. I mean, the moment that a kid drives up a holler, they lose connectivity. We got kids that have to sit in McDonald's to be able to do their homework. Our roads are falling off the sides of the mountains. And I'll tell you what, when you drive from the northern part of the state to southern, you see it drastically change. When you get down here to southern West Virginia, it is absolutely atrocious when you look at our roads. And, you would think that these people in Washington, D.C., who have aspirations of other things, would actually be bringing things to West Virginia. The Republicans in power, all three members of Congress, bring nothing to West Virginia. Shelley Moore Capito brings nothing to West Virginia. Joe Manchin has brought nothing to West Virginia, and they continue getting reelected. I don't understand how failures always win in West Virginia, but I know what they do. It's single issue voters. That's all that it is.
So what's that single issue?
Oh, it's always God, gays, and guns. That's all it is. God, gays, guns, and then throw some abortion in there. And these people, everybody, as long as it's one of those four things, you're going to get the people that are going to go with you, even if it cuts their own throat.
It's incredible, but we're hearing this, Rich, that he's saying, look, we want bipartisanship. So can we give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he's seeking some bipartisanship? Maybe in the cloakrooms or in the bars that he hangs out with them, maybe they're whispering in his ear that there's a possibility. Now, you and I both know That's never going to happen. And we've seen this movie over and over again. You go back to the Affordable Care Act fight back in 2010, where they did the exact same thing, and it took better part of a year to get through it all. They still didn't. Not one Republican voted for it. But can we possibly say that maybe he's having conversations somewhere that he believes that this is possible, or is this really just all about him running for governor, you think?
No, this is all about Joe. This is all about Joe. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see what they're doing. We know that the Republicans aren't going to meet anybody in the middle. Mitch McConnell has already said that his main focus is to make sure that Joe Biden is a one-term president.
Right.
That's what they're doing. And we know what their plan is. Their plan is to obstruct everything so that the Democrats can't get anything done. And then in 2022, they're going to come in and they're going to say, hey, the Democrats have been in power and they got nothing done. They're not going to tell everybody that they didn't get anything done because we obstructed everything, because they know people have short attention spans. And at the end of the day, people are going to go, well, they didn't do anything. And then the Republicans are going to win again. And if they take back control, they're going to go right back to no bipartisanship. They're going to force feed everything that they have. And literally the only way we come back is if they burn it to the ground. It's so sad that we have people in this country. I spent 24 years in the military. I understand what leadership is. And what I'm seeing from Joe Manchin is not leadership. It's pure cowardice. He's too coward to do the right thing. And I don't care if that's what his legacy is going to be. If he wants his legacy to be that when he had the power, when he was the most important and the most powerful Democrat in the history of West Virginia, instead of using that power and bringing capabilities to your people that need it more than anybody because we're last in almost everything, you failed and gave that power to the daggone Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the fact that I keep hearing, well, with such big legislation, with electoral legislation, with big things, we have to do it in a bipartisan way. Except the 14th and 15th Amendments were passed on a strict party line vote. We have done this before, and it didn't rip the country asunder as some claim this will do, and as Joe Manchin did in his piece.
I'm just saying, switch parties. Just go ahead and switch parties, Joe. Stop making us think you're something that you're not, because you're not. You might as well just go ahead and switch the Republican Party and go ahead and put Mitch back in the daggone majority, make him the majority leader again, because he practically is. I mean, he's the guy in the minority, but he's really the majority right now. And it's all because we've got two Democrats that are giving him that power. And all I'm thinking of is, what are they offering you, Joe? What are they giving you, Joe? And at the end of the day, if you go back and you research Joe, he's not a typical Democrat. Most Democrats in this country, when they run for office, they say, I will take no corporate PAC money. Go look at his money. This guy takes corporate PAC money from anybody. And the majority of his money come from large dollar donations. His small dollar donations practically mean nothing to him. He's no different than a Republican as well. And now he's showing that he's no different than a Republican.
Now, what do you say to the person who goes, Joe's right. The For the People Act was it was a political campaign stunt. It was written in 2020. We need real reform. This isn't it. So on this issue, Joe's right. We should then get down to the hard work of hammering out a deal that is not an election year deal. What do you say to that argument?
I say they're wrong. We need this. Goodness gracious, gerrymandering. We've got big money in politics. There's so much that the For the People Act is going to do for this country. Being able to allow people to have access to voting. Right now, the Republicans across this country have pushed over 250 voter suppression bills. We already know that democracy is under attack. To sit here now and what do you want to wait? You want to wait a couple more years? You want to wait until 2022 before this stuff hits us in the face? I mean, right now is the time to act. And Joe Manchin has basically stepped up and showed that he's not willing to be that person. When the country needed you the most, you failed, Joe. And I don't care. He needs to be told that. He needs to know that. If that's what his legacy is, then he needs to own it.
Now here's the part that gets me. As you've said, if nothing happens in 2022, the Republicans have already set the table to do what they wanted to do in 2020, which is overturn elections because they believe some nonsense, made up untruths, lies. We'll just call them what they are, and they're going to use that to overturn elections. That's already in place in several states across this country. Is it going to take that? And I'll be honest, if that's the point, then it's already too late because they've already got the elections.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see this, and it's so sad that we finally were able to take back the Senate, even though it was 51-50 with Kamala Harris. But at the end of the day, we got the majority. We control the House, we control the Senate, we control the White House, and yet we can't get nothing done. The Republicans don't play fair. And it's time the Democrats, daggone, put the pillowcase down and put the brass knucks on. It's time. It's time. And we're sitting here and we're going to lose. We're going to lose our majority because we have people like Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, as far as I'm concerned, from this day forward, is nothing more than a snake in the grass. He's not a Democrat. He's been a Republican, wearing a Democrat's, jacket. And he's showing that. I mean, I can't. I'm so disappointed right now in Joe Manchin.
No, as we should be, because look, I fully expect if the shoe's on the other foot, I expect Mitch McConnell to do anything in his power to get through what he wants to get through.
I mean, think about it. Think about that. I mean, they said the Democrats got to stop playing nice. Hey, we don't think it's right for anybody to appoint a Supreme Court justice in their last year as president. What did the Democrats do? Okay, if that's what you guys want, we're going to do it. Then what did the Republicans do? They force-fed us somebody a week before Donald Trump lost. The Republicans have a separate standard that they go by, and they don't care to go low. It's time for us to stop giving in to these people. Mitch McConnell, anybody that says my goal is to make a president fail is not an American. How can he even call himself and how anybody can refer to him as any type of leader at all? These are people that are absolutely obstructionists, and they are not right for America. They're destroying our country. And our country it doesn't mean that we can't fail. It doesn't mean that our country cannot fall. Right now, we are in a situation. We just had an attempted coup that took place at our nation's capital. And you know what? We've had 2 senators that committed insider trading, and I guess they're going to get away with it. We had 6 senators give tours the day before the coup, and I guess they're going to get away with it. Nobody has done anything to Matt Gaetz, and he's on the daggone committee that's investigating him. I mean, how bad can things get in this country? And yet we don't have any leadership that steps up and says, this has got to stop. I'm telling you, you talk about 2022 and the Republicans probably already having the fix in place to win. I'm sitting here thinking to myself right now, if this is the way that it is, then we're doomed.
So this is the way it is. Do you see Donald Trump being reinstalled in August?
No, it's not going to get reinstalled. Donald Trump is never going to be reinstated as president. That's not how it works. I don't think that I believe if Donald Trump ran in 2024, he would get scuffed up. Every day more every day more Republicans are waking up. The reason why the Republicans are doing all this voter suppression is because they know if they don't cheat, they're not going to win. There's 40 million more people that actually register as Democrats than there are Republicans. Donald Trump is not a leader. I don't think he can win. I mean, the guy just showed up. I mean, was his pants on backwards? Did he have a My Pillow shoved down his pants? It amazes me how many people keep acting and waving the flags that show him where he's ripped and cut and stuff like that. Donald Trump is the picture of unhealthy. He's not going to win again. But the thing about it is Donald Trump lost, but the Republicans had a red wave. They won on the state level and on the local level all across the country. We can't afford another one of those. Right,
and that comes back down to the infrastructure that they've built on the state level, the gerrymandering, the voter suppression stuff that they've been. You got to give them credit. When it came time for them to act and to be united, they were. I've said this before. I blame Joe Manchin and Kelly Sinema on someone like Chuck Schumer. You would have never had this under a Newt Gingrich leadership or under a Tom DeLay leadership.
Republicans don't play that. Republicans don't play that. If you cross the Republicans and you're a Republican, your career is over with. They will run you out of Washington, D.C. The Democrats don't play those games. The Democrats apparently, right now, every Democrat should be absolutely throwing mud at Joe Manchin. Every one of them. His reputation should be garbage right now. But nobody's doing it, and I'm done. I have literally dedicated my last 3 lives to ripping him a new one. And let me tell you something. I got his phone. I got his personal phone number. I'm sending him texts that I know he ain't happy with, and I don't care.
Well, we should be publishing those at some point down the road, because that would be a funny conversation to get in the middle of. Because, look, at the end of this, someone has to do this. Someone has to hold them accountable, because here's where I'm at in this moment. I know that in 2022, or in 2024, if McConnell has the White House and a majority in the Senate, the filibuster's done already. And he's going to justify it by saying, well, the Democrats wanted to do it, and that's where they're going to go.
They're going to kill it, and then they're going to force feed us everything that they want. Congratulations. Thanks, Joe.
So what do you say to the person who goes, well, we can't kill the filibuster because bad things will happen? And I'll be honest, I'm a little leery, because I know when Republicans get control, the first thing they're going to do is hand Social Security over to Wall Street. They're going to do everything they can to bust up unions and make it illegal. They're going to do those things.
Yeah.
What do you say to the person who goes, look, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. If we get this through now, Republicans are eventually going to be in control, and they're going to undo it all, and we're going to be this banana republic.
And that's what I say. Look, if the Republicans love the filibuster so much, then they can bring it back when they're in power. But right now, let's kill the filibuster and let's get some things done for the people of this country. The things that Joe Biden is asking for are things that are benefiting the working class citizens, the things that are helping unions, the things that are going to fix our roads, the things that's going to bring broadband. Those are the things that Americans desperately need. So you know what? If we got to kill the filibuster to get that to our people, then let's do that. Because the truth is that when the roads are fixed, Republicans drive on them too. It's good for Republicans to see people get things done, whether it be Democrats or Republicans. But at the end of the day, the Democrats have an opportunity to do it, and we need to follow through.
Without question. And the reality here is look, we know that come election time, if people have good jobs, if life is going well, they're going to stick with the people in power, and Republicans understand that as well as anybody.
Exactly.
And what this is doing is putting a roadblock in the way of that place of us getting better jobs and better infrastructure and better opportunities for our kids and our families. Something's got to be done, and it's got to be now, and I'm with you.
Yep, airborne.
Real quick, pitch the podcast.
Well, right now, I'm asking people to go to airbornelive.com, because we just started our own T-shirt market. And let me tell you something. You want to get that Marjorie Trader green T-shirt because it's pure fire. And we also have a Kentucky Fried A-hole, and it's got a nice picture of Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell. So check us out, airbornelive.com.
There you go. Good stuff. Rich, always fun talking with you. I appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, my brother. Anytime. Airborne.
Airborne. My good friend, Rich Ojeda. Make sure you check out his website. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That was the day that Police Chief Orville Ederholt was shot and killed at a camp of striking textile workers in Gastonia, North Carolina. The textile mills had fallen on hard times in the late 1920s. During World War I, demand for cloth for uniforms had sent the industry booming. But at the end of the war, orders dried up. Then, to make matters worse, new fashion trends had women wearing shorter skirts, further cutting demand. In response, the mill owners at the Lorry Mill began what was called the stretch out. They laid off numerous workers and demanded that those who remained worked faster without raising wages or, in many cases, cutting workers' pay. The National Textile Workers Union recognized that these conditions made it an ideal time to begin organizing in the South. The Lorry Mill was the largest in the state. On April 1st, 1,800 workers went out on strike. The company responded by evicting strikers from company housing and hiring deputies to harass picketers. As tensions escalated, Police Chief Ederholt, along with some of his officers and company-hired guns, went to a workers' camp. When Ederholt was shot and killed by an unknown person, the police arrested dozens of strikers. 16 eventually stood trial, but no one was convicted. Then, in September, Ella Mae Wiggins, a popular speaker who wrote songs for the strikers, was shot and killed at a workers' rally. The union lost its fight, and North Carolina remains one of the lowest unionized workforces in the nation.
They labored in the textile factories from early morn till close
Labor
of
History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news out this week by the good fortune people, the good folks over at Fortune Magazine. Turns out our CEO class doing better than ever. Thank you very much. In fact, they saw their wages jump, 16% last year? While the average working stiff, folks like you and me, saw a meager 1.8% increase. And look, that's been year after year. That's nothing new. We're used to it. But for me, it's one of these moments where you go, at what point do we say enough is enough and demand better? That's why, whenever there's a job action going on, there's a strike, there's organizing going on, we want to talk about it here on the program. And this, again, is another one of those moments, the rich getting richer and the rest of us, well, not so much. Now, since April 1st, the good workers over at Warrior Met Coal, they've been on strike, demanding better wages, hours, and conditions. Remember, these are the essential workers. These are the frontline heroes. Remember that, because, we sure played that game. But their CEO, a guy named Walter Scheller, he saw his pay jump 8% while trying to deny these workers just a meager existence. He made what, $4.3 million. I guess you get a little extra cheese on your Whopper there. But here to share some thoughts on the strike. They've been on strike since April 1st, like I said. I have asked Haeden and Braxton Wright to come talk with us. Haeden is the UMWA auxiliary president for locals 2245 and 2368. Her husband, Braxton, he's a UMWA control room operator and one of the committee men there on strike. Guys, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having us.
So walk me through this. April 1st, guys go on strike. Why?
A lot of it's just it's an unfair labor practice strike. A lot of it's just we want to be treated fair. We want the dignity back in our workplace. Not only did they cut our insurance, our benefits, they cut our off time, our holidays. We only guaranteed 3 holidays a year. That is Christmas Eve, Christmas, and Thanksgiving.
That's it?
That's it. And a lot of us are working 6 to 7 days a week. There is no 7th day off anymore. They took that away also.
And this is at a moment where, you've got this CEO and the executives lining their pockets. I'm sure they don't work 6 and 7 days a week. So at the end of it, you're going, look, it's about wages, hours, conditions, and you guys are out. The company not moving at all?
No, the company's not budging at all.
So when you guys decided this is the time to go, what was that like? What was it like having to make that decision that we've now got to take to the picket line? Our families are going to have to struggle and suffer and sacrifice. What was that decision process like?
It was tough. The company's had 5 years to negotiate a contract in good faith and had just not been interested.
Now, this company's profitable. I was looking at some of the information on them. They're profitable enough to give their CEO an 8% raise. His pockets are full, but not wanting to share the wealth, so to speak, with the people who actually create that wealth. That seems very well typical. Yeah,
they want to show a loss for last year, but it was because that they had purposely spent $160 million on two new sets of shields. Just to show a loss for the year coming up before contract.
Yeah, they always do that, don't they? I've been a part of it. The games never seem to end, especially when it comes to them lining their pockets and, well, you getting the short end of the stick. Haeden, let me ask you, because, clearly this affects the family. You've got young children. This can't be easy on you guys.
No, it's not. But the past 5 years under this contract hasn't been easy. because these guys are working 8 to 12 hours a day, most of the time 7 days a week. There actually is no limit in the current contracts. They could actually schedule you to work 14 days, 21 days. You weren't guaranteed to be off at all. And on top of that, the current contract, which this is the contract that happened when they filed bankruptcy. You know, it's one of those amazing things. They filed bankruptcy and got a buyout, but then all of the actual main company people stayed the same. They just changed the name.
Right.
So when they actually went on strike, most of us were relieved because we're like, okay, now something's going to change. Because they had a strict 4-strike policy, which is really 3 strikes and then you're fired. That was on anything. So if you broke down on the way to work and were late, you would be given a strike. Oh, but they still wanted you to stay at work.
Yes.
And I know ladies that were having miscarriages. Their husbands were given a strike for missing work. A man whose lady was in the hospital with a heart attack, they give him a strike for missing work because those had to be turned in for emergencies is what they're supposed to be. But if it wasn't within 24 hours, how do you know you're going to have an emergency 24 hours in advance?
Yeah.
They'll give you a strike.
So,
Well, then as families, you have to decide, do I even call him and tell him what's going on? Because he could lose his job. So it puts a lot of pressure on your entire family.
no, it sounds like it. Now, the sad thing is I've heard these stories before, and it sounds like, we've gone back to the Stone Ages where you're basically the slave to the company store and to these companies who have all of this power over you. And that's why I give folks credit for going out on the picket line and saying enough is enough. You want to negotiate, you want to be at the table, you want to hammer out the best agreement you possibly can. But ultimately, it gets to a point where you got to pull the last arrow out of the quiver and make that call. Now, I've been watching some of the stuff going on the picket line. It seems to be getting a little more heated. There have been a couple of incidents where you've got people who are crossing the picket line. You got these scabs going back and forth. In fact, a couple of people have been hit. It sounds like things are kind of getting out of control down there.
Right. And it's not union violence. It's violence the company is putting against us. All we're doing is using our right to assemble, which we have a legal right to assemble to protest, to say that, hey, we want fair labor practices. And the company is trying to prohibit that. We had another incident this morning to where a truck ran through a picket line. We had a truck turn around a few days ago that had passed the line, came and turned around and ran through the picket. Luckily, those 2 men moved out of the way, but when he hit the fire barrel, it actually slung it into one of the men, and he had an injury from that. Then we had a boss intentionally hit one of the representatives down from another state after, of course, it was a Warrior Met paid security guard, flags him over to ask him a question, and then waves the truck on through, and the truck hits him. And this is on video. You can't deny that these things are happening, and the company needs to stop this. The company needs to negotiate in good faith. They need to give a fair contract.
And this is where we need stronger federal labor laws to be put in place to protect workers on the picket line. Because look, you're in Brookwood, Alabama, just not too far away from where Bessemer was with the Amazon vote. And when you look at what towns are doing in your neighborhood, and I'm hoping you're going to explain to me, because where I'm from, you'd have hit me with that car, you'd have taken me away in an ambulance, somebody would have got arrested, their day would have gotten much worse. But that guy just drove off, and who knows what. How are the local authorities, how are people down there treating you guys? And is this one of those moments where we do need federal intervention and federal labor law to help protect you guys? Braxton, what are you seeing?
The local police department, the Brookwood Police Department, they won't hardly have anything to do with this. Of course, a lot of Warrior Met used to spend a lot of money in Brookwood, and I imagine they still are, because the local police departments just don't have anything to do with it. We're receiving no help from them. They won't even write the guys speeding tickets for flying by the picket lines.
And honestly, the truck that ran through that picket line went on into work. The police said that they weren't able to find the vehicle. Our union reps, our UMWA union reps went and found the vehicle and contacted authorities. If it wasn't for our reps being there and making sure things were getting done and that they were taken care of, nothing would be getting done.
No, and it's a good thing you guys are videotaping everything. In this day and age, you've got to protect yourselves because ultimately, you want to be safe in what you're doing, and you want to go back to work and you want to continue your jobs, but you want to do it at a reasonable wage with good benefits, with reasonable hours. It all comes back to wages, hours, conditions. And I know coal mining is a dangerous job. This is all part of that. So walk me through some of this, Braxton, if you will, because from what I'm reading, there's not a lot of written stuff, but it doesn't seem like they were willing to negotiate from the beginning at all. And it seems to me like they're trying to break the union. Is that the sense that you're getting?
That is correct. That's what it seems like to us.
Because how many union coal mines are left in Alabama? I know that I don't think there are any left in Kentucky. They've done a fairly successful job of running you guys out and using our broken, ossificated labor law to do that. What's your sense?
Yeah, there's still 3, separate union coal mines here in Alabama. We have Shoal Creek, Oak Grove, and then the 2 mines at Warrior Met, which we have 4 different locals, at the Warrior Met.
So what kind of support are you getting? Are you getting any support locally, or is what you're seeing, because I've been seeing some writing nationally. I've been seeing some things. What are you seeing? What are you getting?
Yeah, we're not seeing a lot of local media reports. They're saying that their producers are not really interested.
How can you not be interested in what is, a story about working people trying to make their lives better, their communities better? I mean, this is one of those stories that you talk to local politicians going, look, if our lives get better, we get more income, you get better tax revenue, we spend more money in town, that creates jobs. This is a job creating environment. Why are you not behind this?
Well, we've asked the politicians that too, because Democrat, Republican, they haven't offered support either way. There's been several that I've personally messaged, called them out on Twitter, several that didn't mind attending the rallies that we had prior to the strike to get votes, but now that we're on strike and need help, they're completely silent to it.
What kind of help are you getting from the UMWA? I know when I was on strike years ago, we had a strike defense fund, didn't pay the bills, but put food on the table, made sure we didn't go hungry. What are you guys doing? Are you guys doing a fundraising campaign to help, so folks can maybe help out if they want to, which I hope folks will do? Are you doing any of that?
Yes, the UMWA has a strike aid fund. Currently, they don't have an online donation platform, but I can send you the link to where you can mail in donations for them. With the auxiliary, we have a PayPal account for the strike pantry. Currently, we're doing a lot. We're doing hot dogs at some of the rallies to help feed the men and the families. We're doing at least 200 food pantry bags a week for striking miners and their families. We're doing baby items. We're doing hygiene products, normal household things. We're planning on back to school bags for the kids. And we're also doing new baby bags because we've had several babies. We actually had 2 babies born today that were born on strike. So, I mean, that's a struggle and that's a scary thing. So we're trying to make sure that we give them that support to where they don't feel like they need to cross, that they know that the union is about solidarity. It should be brothers and sisters, and we need to take care of each other.
No, and it should be across the board. I've been a Teamster for more than 30 years, and I've marched with my UMWA brothers and sisters when they were fighting to steal your health insurance, when they were fighting to destroy your retirement security. This is about keeping the promises that we've made as a society, but more importantly, ensuring that workers have rights to sit down and fairly bargain with their employer for the wealth that they create. I know the saying is always one day longer, and I wish you guys the best in this. But are there any ongoing talks at this moment? Any pressure that we can put to bear to ensure that folks get back to the table? What's the situation at this moment?
I think the big thing that's kind of hurting us here in Alabama is that we're a right to work state. A big shout out to Please Research and Pass the PRO Act. But that's hurting us because we're a union mine, but Right to Work had let them hire in non-union miners to work at a union mine. So guess who the ones scabbing are? So that's a big deal that people need to understand, that those type of laws hurt unions. They're hurting the workers. it was a good title that did the opposite of what the title says.
No, absolutely. So what you're saying is, and this is the argument I've been making for a long time, because Pennsylvania is slated to be probably the next no rights at work state, and I think stories that you've just brought up are extremely important, that the company will hire in a bunch of people that they already know are going to be vehemently anti-union because they vetted them. Hello, yellow dog contract coming back to life, just for the purpose of when we go into negotiations, we've got ready-made scabs right here who are already tearing the union down from inside.
Yeah, so like you said, Jack Richardson brought a bunch with him from Kentucky, and a lot of people that he just worked with personally that come from non-union mines, and none of them would join the union. So a lot of it is the buddy buddies that's come in as scabs.
And now in that situation, because I've heard stories that they'll bring these scabs in, they'll pay them a higher wage than they're paying the union guys just to create that division so that they can divide and conquer. Is that the scenario here?
I think they just using them the same way they use us. I mean, after this is all over, they won't take up for those guys. They'll just be another number. They're still just another number. The bosses, the scabs, us, all they care about is stuffing the pockets of Wall Street and back to their New York-based company, and that's about it.
Yeah, and to Walter Scheller, who got an 8% raise last year. Are you guys asking for an 8% raise?
No.
Why not? I mean, he got an 8% raise. That's what seems fair to me. How do we get to that number?
And honestly, the contract, the first offer was insulting.
Yes.
Because back in the bankruptcy, we took the contract. The company said, hey, if you'll get us out of bankruptcy, if you'll take all these concessions, then we'll get you back at the next contract. Well, contract comes around. First of all, they wanted to dock our pay. Our union reps wouldn't even present that one. What they did offer was $1 raise. That's right, $1. And then after 3 years, they would raise it another 50 cents.
And that would have taken you back to where pre-concession levels?
No.
We took a $6 to $8 pay cut based off your bracket then.
Wow.
So we're not even asking really for any type of increase in pay or benefits. We're just asking to get us close to back to what we had 5 years ago.
And
go ahead, Braxton.
An increase in the insurance. They give us, with this last contract, they put us on an 80-20 plan with a $7,500 deductible.
Yeah, you almost can't. That's something you almost can't accept. So last question again. I want to go back to how can we help? What can we do to help you guys? What's the ask?
I think donating to the strike fund, donating to the pantry, coming out to the rallies and showing support. We have rallies at Fanny Hill State Park at 6:00 every Wednesday. Coming out, showing the support to the guys. Taking out waters, even to the lines, little things that just let everyone know that, hey, you're not forgotten about.
Yes.
Because while we're getting all this national coverage, unless someone has social media and they're seeing these things shared locally, when you turn on the TV, there's nobody. You wouldn't think that anyone was supporting you. But there's people worldwide. I mean, we've had donations from the pantry from South Wales, from Canada, from the UK. We have this worldwide support, and these other unions are supporting us, and the guys need to see that and know that. I think
well,
that's
it goes back to the idea of an injury to one being an injury to all. We really are all on this, and we will get links out on social media once you get it to us on how we can get folks to help donate. But guys, I appreciate your time. Keep up the fight one day longer.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Haeden and Braxton. Wright. It's a horrible story that we have to go to this. But I hope folks will support them, and we'll get links out. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. The leader of Lansing, Michigan's United Auto Workers Union, Lester Washburn, returned home in the wee hours of the morning. He had been in Detroit for a meeting. At his home, he found a disturbing scene. His wife was missing, and their phone line had been cut. His children were home alone. He found a public phone and started making calls to find out what happened. He learned that the sheriff had arrested 8 people in a 2 a.m. raid, including his wife. The charge was violating an injunction issued against the strikers at the Capital City Wrecking Company. The action at the plant started in May, part of a wave of strikes led by the United Auto Workers that year. Strike organizers had largely ignored the injunction. Lester had only evaded arrest by not being home. Outraged by the arrests, union leaders called for a workers' holiday. Calls for a general strike echoed throughout the city. It's estimated that as many as 12,000 workers took part in the workers' holiday. Strike supporters also parked their vehicles on roadways and in intersections to block traffic throughout the city. Michigan's Democratic Governor Frank Murphy arrived in Lansing, where he addressed a crowd of more than 4,000 downtown protesters. He pledged to oversee a meeting between the strikers and local authorities. He was able to facilitate the release of those arrested on bond. He also managed to get the Capital City Wrecking Company officials to the bargaining table. The workers' holiday in Lansing was another important chapter of the auto workers' fight to bring union recognition to the auto industry. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
We've got the Academy Awards, the Emmys, and Grammys. But what should we call the award for the most extraordinary performance by a corporate profiteer? How about the Sleazy, with winners getting a solid gold sculpture of a middle finger? There were so many worthy contenders, but one corporation exhibited uncommon callousness, so the 2021 Sleazy goes to Tyson Foods. The meatpacking giant has regularly run roughshod over workers, farmers, communities, and the environment, not to mention the millions of animals it fattens and slaughters. But the coronavirus pulled out the worst in Tyson's corporate ethic. Last April, its billionaire chair, John Tyson, ranted that health officials who were closing down several of his slaughterhouses that had become hotbeds of contagion were creating another crisis, a national meat shortage. Responding instantly, our corporate compassionate, burger-gobbling president decreed that meatpacking plants were crucial to America's national security and must be kept open at all cost. Trump's edict required workers to return to their jobs or be fired. Only there was no meat shortage. Indeed, Tyson and other giants actually increased their meat exports to China last year. Meanwhile, COVID rampaged through Tyson's factories. In its Waterloo, Iowa facility alone, a third of the processing workers were infected and at least 6 died. Which brings us to the corporate play that cinched this year's Sleazy for Tyson. Waterloo slaughterhouse supervisors actually knew that the back-to-work order would sicken hundreds, but not exactly how many. So, managers organized a winner-take-all betting pool on the percent of employees who would test positive. It was simply something fun, said one, kind of a morale boost. This is Jim Hightower saying the virus infected more than a third of the workers in the plant. Some fun, huh? The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you remember back during the pandemic when we were talking about frontline heroes and we were talking about essential workers, especially those meatpacking folks who just got slammed. In fact, the one place in South Dakota, as I remember the story going, they went from like 0 to 80 in a couple of days. And then, within a month or so, up to over 1,200 people got sick. In fact, you go to the one in Iowa, I think it was Iowa, where you had supervisors who were betting on how many people they could get sick. It's kind of scary to think. But now you've got these, again, people we were told were frontline heroes and essential, who lived through all of that. They made it through, and now they're saying, hey, we want better wages, we want better hours, we want better conditions, we want safer conditions. We got the title, hero, frontline hero, essential. Now treat us like that. Here's the thing. They're negotiating their new contract in a Smithfield contract in South Dakota. 99% of them said no. 99% said no to the latest offer by the company. In fact, they just took a strike vote. 98% of them said, we're ready to go on strike. And here to share some thoughts on why this is, what's going on, I've asked Kooper Caraway to come talk with us. He's the president of the South Dakota AFL-CIO. Cooper, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
So, I look back to, the heart of the pandemic, all the stories of, like I said, frontline heroes and essential workers. And we were patting people on the back. In fact, some companies even threw out some pennies and some bonuses. I think even Smithfield gave out some bonuses for people to come to work while they were sick. Now when it's contract time, we're not seeing that same kind of love. Are you surprised by that?
Yes and no. So, it takes quite a bit of audacity to look at the workers who have gone through the year that they've gone through, watched 1,200 of their coworkers get sick, watched their workplace become the number one hotspot in the country, on a number one on a list that was just jails. The rest was just jails. Smithfield was the only hotspot that was a workplace. Everything else on the list were prisons, jails, things like this. And so this is a company that looks at their workers who spent this year watching over 1,200 of their coworkers get sick with the coronavirus, watched 4 of their coworkers die, watched people all around them in the community get sick and things like that. And they persevered through all that. They made changes through all that. They pushed the company to take safety precautions. When the company was taking their cue from our governor and hesitating on taking safety precautions, they showed one of the most courageous and really showed perseverance and things like this for a year. Really had each other's back. And now you have this company who called them essential, called them heroes, but now say, we're going to take away your 15-minute break. Now they say, we're not going to give you a pay increase, even though right down the road, they're starting at $19 an hour instead of $17 an hour right here in Sioux Falls. They're saying, we're going to limit your unpaid time off so that the refugees who work there can't go visit their families in Africa or Asia. It's quite an alarming sense of audacity from the company.
Yeah, at the end of it, it's all about profit for them. And these are people who, as I was looking at some of the numbers, they're doing fairly well. It's not like they're poor.
No, they're doing good. So far, the union has, in past contract negotiations, the unions secured them good pay. If you're working there 20, 30 years, you're making, $30, $40 an hour or something like that. You're making good pay. The union has done a good job of looking out for the workers. And all they're asking for are just little things. Don't take away my 15-minute break and have the starting base pay at $17. Move it to $19 like they have it at the JBS plant 20 minutes down the road.
Yeah, I'm talking about the company. I'm talking about the company. The company they're not poor.
The company's a multi-billion-dollar company. It was bought out by a Chinese-owned company a few years ago, 2011 or so. So this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and so they have almost unlimited resources. And so it's almost comical that a multi-billion-dollar company would sit and argue over a 15-minute break.
So what is at the end of it, what's the game plan? I just talked with, a couple who are on strike down in Brookwood, Alabama at the Warrior Met Coal Company down there. And they're like, look, this is union busting. This is what's going on here. Can we say the same thing about what's going on in your neck of the woods?
If it is, it's a really bad idea. This is a strong union. This is a 4,000 person strong union. They have upwards of 90%. South Dakota is one of the original right to work states. You don't got to be in the union if you don't want to. You can scab all day long if you'd like. But that plant down there is upwards of 90% union membership. Is one of the strongest unions in a right to work state I've ever seen. So if their intention through these negotiations is to be difficult and drag their feet to bust that union, then they're really barking up the wrong tree and making a grave error.
No, because because I was going to ask about that, because some of the things that I've seen, there's a culture of people being in the union and because they understand it's a difficult job. It's a job that you need protection and you need to fight for better conditions. Because one thing I think, again, as a society we learned is that that's a tough job. It's a dangerous job. It's a crowded job. It's a job that I don't think many people want to do, which is why I think you guys get paid. They get paid fairly well. But you do need your time off. You do need you need the conditions part of this to get better as well, especially because you came out of this pandemic. You want to make sure if this happens again, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that you have something in place to make sure you don't have to relive the nightmare you just went through.
That's right, and it's because of the workers that things didn't get even worse. Before Smithfield was a hotspot, the workers, because of their unique position, as many of them being refugees from Asia, from Africa, from other places, they were getting word out before the pandemic hit South Dakota very hard. They were getting word from their families of how hard the pandemic was hitting them in their home countries, and so they sounded the alarm early on in 2020 and pushed Smithfield to make these changes, and Smithfield didn't pay any attention to them. They brushed them off within 6 weeks of that, it was the #1 hotspot in the United States.
Now, as I said, the contract that was offered by Smithfield, the 4-year contract, was rejected by 99% of the union workers that voted in the election. And now the strike vote, 98% of them have said they're going to go on strike. Do you think this is going to move the company back towards, potentially settling this, or do you foresee a potential of a strike?
I mean, if these folks, management's folks that are coming to the table, have more than 2 or 3 brain cells in their head, then this ought to lead them to coming to a compromise and understanding that this is not the year you can push these workers around. These workers are determined to be treated as essential. They're determined to be treated as heroes. And so, I mean, I firmly believe that there's at least one person on management's negotiation team that is smart enough to realize that this is the year where management is going to have to make a concession or two.
Because here's the thing, and a lot of people that I've talked to, this is the year that I expect a lot of strike activity to go on, as people are saying, look, we've been underpaid for too long. Conditions have gotten too bad. We don't have the benefits we think we should have. And finally, people are waking up to the reality that we're not going to take crummy desperation wage jobs that are in deplorable, dangerous conditions anymore. We're just not going back to 2019. We want to move forward. And the tool that people have is organizing, joining and forming unions. And ultimately, if you have to, and I hope nobody ever does, but going on strike.
That's right. The only power that working people have in this country is the power to organize, the power to stick together, and the power to withhold their labor. One of the great union leaders said that all the working class has to do to bring the bosses to their knees is stick their hands in their pockets. And that guy was exactly right.
No. And are you seeing more of this kind of activity in your neck of the woods? Obviously, as you pointed out, South Dakota is one of the original no rights at work states. Are you seeing a lot of this kind of, especially among younger workers? Are you seeing a lot of this kind of talk?
Yeah, especially younger workers, they're being much more courageous with their labor activity. They're much more willing to organize. They're much more willing to take risks. They're much more willing to make big demands at the negotiation table, to rewrite labor laws at the negotiation table, to kind of rewrite the workday at the negotiation table and make these kind of big asks and whatnot. And you're seeing it not just in South Dakota, but all over the place. I heard you were talking to our brothers and sisters down in Alabama. I was on their fundraiser. They had a national fundraiser. I spoke at their national fundraiser and raised, $60 some odd thousand for that, and for the workers down there. And I think you're seeing a heightened sense of labor militancy and a heightened sense of courage with all these new younger workers joining. I think before the pandemic hit, the several years, 2018, 2019, those were one of the first years that the labor movement had seen net growth in a long time, in many decades. And 75% of the new union members were under 35 years old. So you have this whole new generation of folks who grew up in high school, who all they know how to do is organize. During high school, that was Obama's election, and they organized a lot for that. After that, there was a school walkouts over immigration reform in 2010, 2011. Then you had the Occupy Wall Street thing around that same time. And then you had the growth of the Black Lives Matter protests and everything. So these kids, they're joining the workforce. They're getting out of high school, they're getting out of college, and all they know in their heads is when there's a problem, organizing is going to solve it. And they're joining their unions, and they're bringing that sense of militancy and courage and passion, and they're bringing it into the labor movement at the time when it was desperately needed.
No, absolutely. But for me, as a labor guy, and I've been a union member for over 30 years. The history of labor is something that we do our labor history in two here on the program to educate people about what it took in the past to get where we are. And sadly, I don't see that the younger generation has as the understanding of what the history had been. But there's also part of me that goes, maybe they don't need it. Maybe they just need to say, we're not taking it anymore.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing right now. What they're doing right now is saying we're not taking it anymore. If the current labor leaders in the AFL-CIO and outside of the AFL-CIO, the ones who have been in there, folks like you, for folks who have been in the movement for 30, 40 years, the best thing those folks can do is to help guide the younger generations and show them the history and say, look, when I was 20 years old, I threw rocks, and this got us this. When I was 20 years old, we walked out and we did this, and things like that. Because the young folks, we have the energy and we have the courage. The worst thing that could happen is the older generations try to crush that energy and that courage and that militancy. What we need is leadership that is willing to embrace the courage and passion and also do a little bit of educating on the labor history, because that's all this younger generation needs. Add that labor history with the courage and passion, and we'll have a whole new rejuvenated labor movement. And
we need it because, I've often said to some of my contemporaries, if you will, people my age, that, the reason this generation's important is they grew up watching their parents struggle. They grew up watching their parents get their pensions stolen. They grew up watching their parents seeing their wages get outsourced and shipped overseas. They grew up suffering through what sadly has happened to the working class of this country, and they don't have to take it anymore. Which is why I think we're seeing the kind of change that we're seeing, especially in the low wage sector. I'm sure you've been hearing the same kind of talk that I've been hearing. We got a labor shortage. You got a bunch of people who don't want to go back to poverty wage jobs, and that's a wage shortage they claim. I say simply, it's a wage shortage. You pay people, they'll show up.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, as far as I can tell, almost the entire country is currently involved in protected concerted activity by refusing to work for poverty wages. Anytime you see a sign that says, oh, well, nobody wants to work anymore, okay, good. What I see is a sign saying, okay, all the workers in this neighborhood are engaging in protected concerted activity by refusing to work at this place who's going to pay them poverty wages.
I love that.
And I think if we see more and more of that, then the better off we'll all be.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I did want to switch the conversation a little bit. You've got kind of a crazy governor out there. The one who said that, housing and pipes, that's not really infrastructure because it's, which is kind of kooky because the last time I checked, my house has pipes. Do they have pipes in houses in South Dakota?
They absolutely do. They have pipes, and many of them are put in there by the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and so they're good, strong union pipes, and they'll last a long time. And they are part of infrastructure. I've never our governor uses some funny definitions for things like personal freedom and liberties and infrastructure that I'd never quite heard of before, except for when I was forced to read Atlas Shrugged in high school. But outside of that, I'd never heard anybody else use those definitions of liberty, freedom, or infrastructure.
Yeah, I guess she's getting a new jet. Is that coming? You guys paying for a new jet for the governor?
What she likes to do is, she needs a new jet because she spends very little time here in South Dakota. Our governor is very rarely in the neighborhood. She spends her time jet setting around, either meeting with Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago and I guess conspiring to commit more insurrections, or hanging out on the jet of the My Pillow guy, or whatever else she does. But she goes around doing fundraisers in North Carolina and Texas and Florida way more than she spends any time here.
Yeah, and you the taxpayers get to pick that up. Just bizarre times we live in. But Kooper, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Keep up the great work. I love the work that you're doing. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Thank you, brother. All power to the working class.
There you go. Kooper Caraway, president of the South Dakota AFL-CIO. Make sure you check out their website. We'll get links out on social media, sd.aflcio.org. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day Boston Carmen of Local 589 voted to strike. Workers had been fighting to organize for years. They now demanded union recognition. In the months before the strike, union representatives had attempted to meet with management with no success. The president of the L, in the days before it was called the T, went so far as to summarily fire 282 employees, claiming the need to maintain discipline. Incensed at the union-busting maneuver, workers walked off the job in the early hours of the morning. They began cutting trolley ropes, smashing train windows, and removing handles on controller boxes. In an effort to bust the strike, management formed a company union. They also brought in over 700 professional strikebreakers and provided housing for the scabs. Over the course of several weeks, dozens of strikers were arrested on charges that ranged from calling strikebreakers scabs to trumped-up felony charges. AFL President Samuel Gompers visited the picket line in a show of solidarity. Area labor unions provided financial and legal support. The union filed charges with the State Board of Arbitration. They argued management had caused the strike by firing hundreds of workers for union activity and coercing workers against joining the union. Once the board confirmed the union's charges, the governor and mayor both pushed for resolution. As well, Boston's Central Labor Union threatened a general strike. Union recognition finally came on July 28th, and the first contract was signed a year later. Since that time, Local 589 has weathered more than a century of anti-union storms as it continues to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, like we were saying, we're seeing more people coming around to the idea of we need to bargain. We need to have protection. I talk to new union members all the time, and one of the things that they get, especially the young ones, the younger workers, is like, we need to have someone in our corner, because they watched their parents just get railroaded. Over the last 30 years, we've seen families struggle like we haven't seen in decades, because it came down to bad trade deals, a chamber of commerce who's more committed to outsourcing jobs to feed the CEO, the CEO coffers. 16% increase during a pandemic year. How do you justify that? When you're talking about the average working person saw less than 2%. And that's not just that year. That's year over year. That's the last 45 years. Trillions of dollars has been stolen from the working class. And this generation's going, you know what? We're not putting it up with it. We're not doing it anymore. We're not going to be the ones who get shortchanged. And good on them. I was having this conversation with somebody because, when I was younger, when I started in the freight game, everybody was on call. You were on call. I was on call like 11 years. They'd call you, 2 o'clock in the morning, be here for 4. Call you at 3 o'clock in the morning, or be here for 5. You got a 2-hour work call. You had to get there. And, I had a guy my age complaining that, they don't know how good they've got it. They don't know how things used to be. And I'm going, no, they're the smart ones. They're the ones who've said, you know what? Not worth it. We're not willing to go through what you went through. And it's easy to go, we had to go through it. You should too. No, it's smart. Good on them for saying we're not going to put up with it. We're no longer going to give up portions of our lives that we don't have to. And again, this comes back to what they saw growing up and the empowerment. And I love how Kooper pointed out. He said, you come through the Obama years where you talked about community organizers, you talked about people making change in their community, standing up and joining together, all of the Occupy Wall Street, all of that stuff, grew into this moment where people are saying, you know what, we shouldn't have to go back to crummy jobs. And this is where I'm hoping that everyone goes, you know what, we want a fairer share of the pie. We want better opportunities. And this isn't political for me. When I talk about the working class, I want to make sure everyone does better. Because when you have a prosperous working class, much like my grandparents' generation built, everything else comes around. Businesses do better because more people have disposable income. Opportunities for kids get better. We fund things at a better rate. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, all of that stuff. Right now, we're in this Hunger Games kind of moment where everyone's trying to hold on to their little piece, trying to hold on to what little advantage that they've got, and holding on to it with a white-knuckled death grip out of fear that someone else is going to do a little bit better. It's a friend of mine loves to tell me, he goes, it's like the rich guy who takes 10 of the cookies that are on the plate and tells the rest of the people in the room, hey, that guy over there is trying to take your crumbs. That's kind of where we're in this moment. Instead of organizing around the ideas that we should all do better, that we all should have opportunity for advancement, we should all have opportunity of education and good health and good opportunity. We should have that. Because, and here's the important part, we can. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the civilized world at its wealthiest moment. I had somebody the other day send me a thing saying, well, country's bankrupt. Well, the country's not bankrupt. Right now, we have a debt, even with all of the extreme spending that Trump did and all the spending that Biden has done, all of this stuff, all of the borrowing we've done, we're still only at 130% debt to GDP ratio. That's it. And you ask yourself, how many people in their own lives? Because if that's bankrupt, more than half the country is bankrupt. Because more than half the country is well more in debt than 130% debt of their debt to GDP ratio. You make $50,000 a year, you got a $150,000 house, you're 300% in debt. Throw student loans on there, throw car payments on there, throw credit card debt on there. People are well further into debt. And the Republicans say, no, we need to do things like the kitchen table. We are not Greece. I had a guy tell me we're going to be like Greece any minute now. Greece was like 700%. They were in real financial trouble. And guess what? Nobody came in and scooped up the entire country. We have the resources to make sure that people do better and have better lives. We can do it. And all of the sky is falling chicken little stuff doesn't play. If we make smart decisions. And it comes back to our politics then. It comes back to what the Joe Manchins of the world will allow. We need a massive infrastructure bill. We do. There's no question about it. We've needed for decades. The Society for Civil Engineers comes out with a report every couple of years, tells us how bad things are and how much they think it'll cost to get us to where we need to go. Right now, we're somewhere in the $4 trillion range in the hole. They're saying, hey, you need to invest $4 trillion. Biden came out and said $1.7 trillion. Republicans lost their freaking minds. He drops it down to $1 trillion, still losing their minds. And what do they want to give up? I think it was like $300 billion. You go, blah. How's that possible? But Rick, they said $600 billion. Yeah, because they're going to steal money from somewhere else. We're talking $300 billion of new money going in. They're just going to steal it from the virus fund. Because they don't want, and again, this is where the politics drives me crazy. Because ultimately, I want to get things done. And I don't care. Look, I was all in favor of a $1 trillion infrastructure bill or a $2 trillion infrastructure bill had Trump had the brains to put it forth. Had the first club out of the bag for Trump been, we're going to go huge on infrastructure, go huge. Had he gone huge on infrastructure, I would have been there right with him. You're right, Donald. We need massive infrastructure spending. He didn't do that. What'd he do? We got to go after that Obamacare. We're going to repeal it and replace it with nothing. It's crazy. And now you've got Joe Manchin with all of the Republicans saying, no, we can't do that big infrastructure plan that needs to be done. Manchin saying it because, I want it to be bipartisan. But Republicans know it's a massive win for Biden and the Democrats. And it could be their demise for the next decade. When people start going back to work, earning good wages, their lives are getting better, their families are healthier, their families are happier. Republicans know that's the death of them. They can't let that happen. They've got to gridlock and delay at every opportunity. They've got to amend things to death and pretend to negotiate to try and run out the clock. That's what this is about. This infrastructure bill should have been passed already so that we could get those shovel-ready projects started today, getting people back to work today, and get those damn roads paved over the next couple of months so my front end doesn't go crazy again. We need that investment, and we need it now. We can't wait. And again, we've been saying this now for over a decade. Interest rates are low. We can borrow all this money. In fact, countries are giving us money to save against deflation. We can invest at zero cost. And you still can't get the Republicans to come on. Because again, it's all about politics for them. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
A cargo ship that was on fire for weeks off the coast of Sri Lanka is now sinking, sparking fears of major ecological disaster.
Cargo ship carrying acid, oil, and plastic sinks off the coast of Sri Lanka. Man-made global warming to blame for 1/3 of global heat deaths, study finds. Plus,
President Biden is making good on a climate change promise.
Interior Department suspends oil and gas drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
All of those promises kept and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Apparently, when Bernie goes on the road, Senator Sanders staffers put together a list of Bernie's travel preferences. He required his room be kept at 60 degrees. In fact, Bernie was so adamant that the room temperature be low, he would go out of his way to keep it at 60, even if it meant opening a window in winter or manually overriding the hotel's climate control system. That must have been quite a phone call to the front desk. I believe in climate change, in that we have to change the climate of this room, or else I swear to God I will sleep in the ice machine. I need to wake up feeling like a flounder in a fish market.
This is your Green News Report.
Click!
Okay, Desi Doyen. Sorry, long snarky comment. What do you got for us today?
Well, first, a full-fledged environmental disaster is underway in Sri Lanka, where a stricken container ship carrying 25 tons of toxic nitric acid and 350 metric tons of oil has been burning for 2 weeks just off the coast. On Wednesday, the ship began to sink, unleashing what is becoming one of the worst ecological disasters in that country's history.
Wow.
Tons of tiny plastic pellets spilled from shipping containers that fell into the sea have swamped the island's coastline and fishing grounds, blanketing beaches as far as 75 miles to the south, with multiple reports of dead fish, birds, and sea turtles already washing up on shore. In climate news, a new study has calculated that more than 1/3 of the world's heat deaths each year are directly caused by man-made global warming. The international team of researchers examined heat deaths in more than 700 cities from 1991 to 2018, comparing observed temperatures with computer models, simulating a world without climate change, finding that nearly 40% of heat deaths were caused by higher temperatures intensified by human-caused global warming. In the U.S., more than 1,000 heat deaths a year, or about 35%, were attributed to climate change. A different U.S.-only study has found that power grid failures have nearly doubled in the U.S. since 2015 and calculated that the combination of blackouts and extreme heat, quote, may be the deadliest climate-related event we can imagine when indoor temperatures rise above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The researchers found the risk from heat exposure is highest in low-income households that can't afford air conditioning. In an interview with CBS, study author Brian Stone of Georgia Tech said cooling centers in the 3 major cities they studied could only accommodate about 2% of the total population.
That really raises questions around what is the level of preparedness for what is a very high health risk and something that's immediate in terms of its timing. This is not, decades into the future. This is this summer.
I will answer that question. We're not prepared at all.
Another new analysis finds that the record winter storm that devastated Texas in February, causing a massive power outage, killed hundreds more people than the official state tally. A new analysis conducted by BuzzFeed News calculated that the true number of people killed by the storm and the blackout is likely 4 or 5 times higher than the 100 or so deaths the state has officially acknowledged so far.
We're talking about hundreds killed.
Yes. Intensifying drought spreading across the U.S. West has set in motion water cutbacks on the Colorado River. Some cutbacks to Arizona and Nevada had already begun, but late last week, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation warned Arizona and Nevada to brace for further cuts. Sparse snowpack this winter melted quickly during the hot, dry spring, producing little runoff, helping to deplete reservoirs across the region. Lake Powell on the Colorado River is at just a third of its capacity. Lake Mead near Las Vegas is at just 38% of capacity. If it falls to 22%, Arizona will lose its entire allotment.
Wow.
Finally, some good news.
Thank you.
The Biden Interior Department has suspended all Trump-era oil and gas leases in Alaska's pristine Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, pending a reassessment of environmental impacts of drilling in the region. The department suspended nearly a dozen leases on the grounds that Trump officials rushed the lease auction and did not follow proper procedures, including required environmental reviews, violating the National Environmental Policy Act. The suspension will require a new environmental analysis, which will be time-consuming and is also likely to spark a lengthy court battle.
Bring it on. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Jeff Bezos going to space. I guess the $500 million boat. I'm guessing that's not enough. I guess he's going to be the guy. I mean, it's, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, there was the conversation of the one who with the most toys when he dies wins. Clearly, Bezos is going to be the guy with the most toys. $500 million boat, a rocket to go to space, taking his brother along. They're auctioning off a seat if you've got almost $3 million. I guess the auction is up now. You can sit right next to Jeff and his brother, and off into space with you. Yeah. Well, the rich in their toys. I'm here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thanks, Rick. Hey, I can split the seat with you. You go half. I'll go half.
I'm going to need more than one seat. You couldn't get me into one of those things. I'm not going into a tin can in this space. Although I'll be honest, I probably would love to. If I had the chance, I would probably jump at it, even if it meant you don't come back. But
there you go.
So some good news, Supreme Court stuff. Our court is coming out with their decisions, and what fun decisions some of them are. Evidently, no temporary status for immigrants, huh?
Right, with the green card. Now, this one is extremely confusing. I read 3 articles on it, twice each. they are, and this is affecting, of course, hundreds of thousands of people. But in one hand, because the people are, quote, illegal and came in illegal, they cannot have green card status. Yet, if they're pending other, reasons for coming in that follow under the law, such as economic or, threats or whatever, then, as I understand it, they could do some work, but they can't have the green card. Now, it looks like it's like almost a permanent thing. So it's the weirdest thing. It doesn't mean automatic deportation, but it definitely alters the green card process.
I got to tell you, our immigration problems are so screwed up. And it comes back to Congress not being able to decide on anything ever.
Oh, correct. When I was there, for the 11 years I was there, the closest we began to, I guess, get to a bill was when George Bush talked about a piece of legislation. In the closed-door sessions, I vividly remember people yelling, this is, a free pass. He's letting people in droves across the border. He's granting everybody, asylum. And it became a non-starter. And that's with, even a Republican president starting the process.
This is just one of those things that's been ripping us apart for far too long. And something has to be done. And look, Joe Manchin and his bipartisanship, how about working on something like this if you think that there's, if you're in Fantasy Island and you think the Republicans are going to come along, how about this as an issue to start with?
If he or a group of people could actually do this, it would be quite amazing. And there are paths to do this. There really are. You'd have a combination on one hand of, obviously DACA is a given. Yep. People were brought here. They didn't even know where they were coming to. They were babies yet to be born young kids. And so that would be the given in it. And then the other would be to clarify, the asylum process, and also to clarify legal immigration, and honestly, tourist visas and other things that have been completely shoved down the rabbit hole in the last 4 years. And then, of course, border security. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with talking about, all the asylum process, et cetera. And then you talk about border security for down the road.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, could be a great start. But I don't think that you'll see Joe Manchin able to gather anybody to do that, in particular when we will roll into the next year, which will be the midterm elections for the House.
Well, because right now, as we're seeing the news coming out, the number of people crossing, I guess, is at a record level.
Yes.
This is going to feed into the to the Republican talking point that Biden's weak on the border. Even though he hasn't really done much in either direction, other than the messaging of we're not going to send kids back into another country. This isn't good. This isn't good for Democrats.
No, it's not. And here's part of the problem. I understand that they did not want to put the president himself, down at the border and stir the issue up. I understand that. So the White House took a step to say, hey, look, this is important enough that the vice president is, sort of the spokesperson and the person to solve this, sort of the immigration czarina, you know what I mean? So they took that step versus ignoring it. But part of the problem now is going to be that the Vice President Harris is going to have to definitely come up, with a game plan, going to have to secure the cooperation and verbal support, public support of Guatemala and Mexico, et cetera, because the numbers are rising, and all it would take would be a couple of caravans and the media turns on it. So I'm not saying that this is the end of the world and that the Democratic side can't solve this, but Rick, I agree with you to basically to just sit there and say, okay, it's going to be all right. No, they need to have plan A, B, and C.
No, and you need to put the blame where it belongs. It belongs on Congress. It doesn't matter who the president's going to be.
Correct.
There's nothing they're going to be able to do without a rational, sane, lucid set of laws. We don't have the capacity or the legal structure to deal with the situation we've got. And all it's going to do is continue to rile people up and continue to cause crisis.
So if they could get some legislation going that meets some common ground, I think it's a decent insulator for the White House, because you make a great point. If it's all up to the executive, then you will have what you had with Donald Trump and the way he undertook it. If we say now it's all up to the executive, then the Biden administration makes every decision, which can be good and which some could be not so good. So, if they throw it back into the format it belongs, which is the House and the Senate, and push hard as the White House, I think it's really the good public policy way to do it. And frankly, it's a political insulator for the White House.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the idea would be, I'm not against border security, but to have a more fluid wall, more fluid border where people can cross back and forth, in an easier way where people who, when they get here, eventually they can go back home. If they choose, and not have this situation where you've got so many people living in the shadows who are so exploitable. That's not a situation that we can have.
Well, that's true, and also people have to remember something that I've complained about. I've sent some messages to members of Congress, both sides of the aisle. They have to remember that when Miller was in the White House with Trump, he used to work for John Shadegg, who was a congressman from Arizona. He did more to alter legal immigration in so many ways, from tourist visas to student visas to marriage visas. It has been altered all over the world through the embassies. And if Congress would just for 1 second start to just look at 3 or 4 countries of what has happened the last 4 years, I think it would take people's breath away.
No, I mean, it's most certainly something that has to be done. Also, the Supreme Court didn't take the case of, I guess they were asked and refused to review the mail-only draft registration. Is this a good decision, you think?
With the mail-only?
Yeah.
I didn't follow that.
Yeah, evidently they were asked to decide whether females should have to sign up for selective service at 18 like males, and they punted it down the road.
Right. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the mail-in. My mind went to mail-in registration. Okay,
that's coming too.
Service and not showing up. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, they punted that issue. My mind went to MAIL registration.
Yeah, so there is that. I'm still waiting for the decision on the ACA. I'm still waiting on some of those.
Well, they have several. Of course, they've got interesting Fulton versus the city of Philadelphia, which is involved with a Catholic agency, and but I think that the California versus Texas and Texas versus California, that one, they're considering the third major challenge now to the Affordable Care Act, and this is really a biggie. It's been brought, as you know, by some Republican-led states and defended by Democratic-led states. And the Justice Department under Trump said that the mandate, of course, was unconstitutional, and the entire law should fall because of the mandate that you have to have the health care. Now, President Biden, of course, wants to build on Obamacare. He doesn't want to get rid of it. So very, very interesting case.
So if it survives, is it Gorsuch or Kavanaugh?
Wow.
Because I'm assuming Roberts is going to go with Breyer.
Roberts is going to be okay. He'll be okay. That is very interesting. I would have to say Gorsuch.
Really? See, I was thinking, I don't think Kavanaugh has a real firm ideology, as much as Gorsuch does.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's interesting because I'm taking kind of if the ACA survives, it's going to be one of those two guys who saves it.
Right, and it's such a big deal because if it doesn't, it will be an instant mess. instant mess.
Yeah, millions of people are going to lose their health insurance immediately.
Right.
Crazy. Also, wanted to get your thoughts on the big news today. Donald Trump and Bill O'Reilly, they're teaming up for a tour.
Well, I mean, look, if we look at what just happened, with former President Trump, when he was giving the speech. I mean, I know everybody talked about the meme in his pants on backwards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if we really look at what was said, with it was the same thing. In fact, the political leaders down there kind of just went, oh no, because they were trying to bring in issues and there's races coming up, and he stayed towards, the election was stolen. And
I'll be back in August.
Right. And so he's going to launch this speaking tour with Bill O'Reilly, and I would just imagine it's just going to be a rehash, I assume, of the stolen election.
My thought is what the hell is O'Reilly doing? O'Reilly tries to play the stern fatherly kind of role. He's not a screamer and a shouter as much as Trump, and I can't fathom why he would have jumped in the middle of that, other than it's a lot of money.
Well, it's going to have 4 live conversations. It's going to be across the country with Trump and O'Reilly. It's going to discuss, they're going to talk about how it was done and what's good and the challenges, et cetera. I think the president will continue to give the mantra of the stolen election and the deep state. But O'Reilly, of course, after he went off his show, maybe he's just looking for some publicity. It'll definitely bring him publicity.
No, there's no question about that. The base may love him again as long as he stays to the right talking points. Also today, the other news out, Stormy Daniels is claiming her attorneys been in contact with the prosecutors in investigating the Trump organization, and evidently there's some new information on audio of Rudy Giuliani strong-arming the Ukrainians.
Right. The Stormy Daniels thing, I don't know. She says her attorney's in contact with the prosecutors, as you say, and I'm sort of like, okay, all right.
I don't care.
Yeah, let's move on to that, Stormy. She's not going to add anything to a New York Trump investigation. The Giuliani thing is a big deal. They have 40 minutes of the now, revealed conversation. And how on earth, from just what we know about the conversation and the badgering, how on earth Giuliani got by or has gotten by with not filing as an agent, how he skirted doing political work. Obviously anything he did, any trips he took, any money he spent should have been an in-kind for the political contribution side. If not, then he acted in the capacity, for the United States government? I mean, this thing is just full of holes, and I think that eventually will be a big deal if the Justice Department wants to pursue it.
I think it has to be. I mean, I've been saying all along we've got to investigate everything that the former administration did. You had all these these actors who are out doing work in our name.
Right, and I think the 2 biggest things, obviously, is the New York state investigation, but I think Giuliani and his activities overseas and what he was trying to do and the pressure he tried to exert, and if they get him to where they can, dig deep and talk to enough people, I think Giuliani would have severe problems.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I want to see him perp walked. I want to see him with shiny bracelets. And finally, I want to get your thoughts on evidently Eric Swalwell, representative from California, has is suing Representative Mo Brooks, Republican of Alabama. Evidently had a private detective serve him with papers, and then the fireworks back and forth. Is this unusual?
Well, first of all, both of the members of Congress know what I and everybody else in the Congress and legal community knows, You can't sue members, and members can't sue members for what I call the cloaking, the floor cloaking. It's so very defined. If you say something on the floor of the House, or you put something in the congressional record, and it would get to the level of a courtroom, okay? You can't actually use what has been publicly known and publicly said in a court process. That's how much it's cloaked. You can get away with doing anything on the floor practically you want, definitely saying anything you want on the floor of the House. You can utter falsehoods about people, you can disparage people, and you can't be sued for it. So the members of Congress have protection. So I think this is more of a publicity thing because it's going to go nowhere when members sue members.
Yeah.
This is not the first time, but if it goes down this path all the time, I'm going to sue you, they all know it can't legally go anywhere.
Yeah, I say just go out in the back, close the door behind you, deal with it, and then come back in when you're done.
Well, we used to live in a world where, they'd make people shake hands. You get in a fist fight. Now you both get a felony charge for a fist fight.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. But now everyone's got an AK-47 or an AR-15.
Well, you never know. It's true.
So there's no more shaking hands afterwards.
But I read that story today, and I thought, okay, come on, guys. He's avoiding one's trying to get the subpoena to him to hire a private investigator, and then the congressman's wife got, quote, harassed, and I'm thinking, okay, a lot of drama.
Yep.
It'll get some ink, but legally it won't go anywhere.
We should see that on daytime TV, not in Congress. There you go. Bob, I appreciate the time. Always great stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. One of the other things I'm looking forward to, there's a bunch of Supreme Court cases that are coming out here in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, the one on the ACA, really important. And there are a bunch of other ones that I find important. The one I'm really looking forward to is this Mahoney Area School District versus BL case. This is the case of the cheerleader who didn't make the cheerleading team, went on Snapchat and chatted out F the school, F softball, F cheer, F everything. And the school, then said, hey, this isn't right. You're suspended from doing any cheer activities for a year. The parents lost their minds and sued. I want to see what the Supreme Court says about this because I really want a judge to go, what is wrong with your parents? What is wrong with somebody? I'll tell you, if I would have written this as a kid, and the school disciplined me, my mother would double the discipline and beat the living tar out of me. I said Jesus in the wrong tone one time to my grandmother, and she split my lip. Now we're going to the Supreme Court because the school disciplined a child for dropping the F-bomb not once but 4 times in public. Am I missing something here? This is the problem. Again, this is another one of those moments where you go, this is the problem in our society. You hear people, especially Republicans, talking about family values and values in general. Yeah, I understand it's free speech. I get it. But what happened to the days where people were respectful? What happened to the days where parents didn't say, well, you have the right to say, F all of this stuff. I'm maybe I'm just old. But this is one of those stories. I cannot wait to see which side of this our Supreme Court comes down on. That it's okay. Say whatever you want. Social media is there for the using. Say whatever you want to whomever you want, however you want, without repercussion. I don't know. That's a different world than I grew up in. And it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to the ACA case. I'm hoping that it doesn't go the wrong way. I'm hoping that millions of people don't lose their insurance. But this cheerleader one, this is it's one of those cases that you go, it's going to be interesting to see where they come down. It's different from the normal Supreme Court case. It's different from the normal corporate case or the values case. just interesting to me. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.